Hello, everybody. My name is Tim Errickson. I am the artistic director of the Boomerang Theater Company, and it is my great pleasure today to be talking with Nehemiah Luckett, composer and music man of all shapes and sizes. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hello, hello. As I like to say, doing better, and so grateful to be chatting with you today.
Excellent. Here's a little background on Nehemiah. Originally from Jackson, Mississippi, Nehemiah Luckett has been performing, composing, conducting for over 25 years. He's been a featured soloist at the National Cathedral, Carnegie Hall, and has performed all over the US, Europe, and Australia. He has composed solo, choral, and instrumental pieces. His Secular Mass, a 5-movement work for chorus, string quartet, oboe, and 3 trumpets, was premiered in 2004. In 2015, he was commissioned by Greenpeace UK to compose Requiem for Arctic Ice, the northernmost part. And in January 2017, his Kyrie 2017 was premiered at the Weill Recital Hall at Carnegie Hall. He has collaborated on 2 full-length musicals, Hamlet, Prince of Funk, and Brick by Brick, the last one based on the work of Edgar Allan Poe. His most recently, he has composed and arranged music for Jazz Singer at the Abrams Arts Center here in New York City, Adia and Clora Snatch Joy for New Dramatist Playtime 2019, A Burning Church for the New Ohio Theater's Ice Factory Festival, Tomorrow Will Be at Boom Arts in Portland, Oregon, and Triple Threats with Tracy Lee, which has been in development with Boomerang throughout 2021. Triple Threats which is very exciting, is going to be getting a workshop production as part of the Florida Theatrical's Discovery series coming up in September 2021. So you've been the busiest man in show business, it turns out.
It's so funny to hear like all of that read, and like, yeah, it's been a wonderful time making a lot of wonderful art with wonderful people.
That's great. That's awesome. So I can't believe that, first off, I'm going to say, I can't believe that I've never heard about or gotten a chance to ask you about Hamlet, Prince of Funk. So you're going to have to come along and tell me what that was like.
Okay, Hamlet, Prince of Funk was officially the first musical that I wrote, and I wrote it with some of my friends in high school, Owen Evans and Matthew Smith. It's interesting also because it was the first time, and it's been a long time since, that I actually did the adaptation and the book, and just like a little bit of the music, and my friends Owen and Matthew wrote the music. But it's a funny story of how that came about, because I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi, loved my public school education there, really had a lot of wonderful opportunities. And one of the schools that I went to was Power APAC, which was the Academic and Performing Arts Complex, where I studied music. And anyway, they were associated with the high school, Murrah High School, which had a history, long, storied history, 50 years of doing musicals. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of that program and wanted to go to that school in my freshman year. Oh, I will say that one of their claims to fame is that Cassandra Wilson went to the school.
Okay.
And one of their first musicals that they did was The Wizard of Oz, and Cassandra Wilson played Dorothy. And this was during a time that was shortly after integration. So it was like a big deal, and the school really letting it be known that they cared about artistry and about, what someone could do and not the color of their skin. And so, I loved it. My freshman year, they did Guys and Dolls, and I had the best experience. And this was the kind of school where the football coach would come to the rehearsals and be like, I need my team members. And the director was like, I'm so sorry, but I have them till 6. So you're just gonna have to wait your turn. And it was just, that tells you a lot about the school.
Yeah.
But then, unfortunately, this was the 90s. So the following year, budgets were slashed, and they said, we just don't have the budget to do a musical. And so that was my sophomore year, and I was like, no, you don't understand. This is my life. This is like what I plan on doing. I really need this experience and I want to do it. And so a few people, they were like, well, you know, you'll have to figure something out, see it, what there is in the public domain. And I was like, the public domain. So, you know, I was reading like all of these plays from the 20s and from the 30s. And I was like, I don't think we're going to find our musical here. And then in English class, we were studying Shakespeare, we were studying Hamlet. And I was like, a like teenager who's torn, can't make decisions, like is having all sorts of family drama, having relationship drama. I was like, this is the story. So every day for 9 months, I read Hamlet, like front to back every single day. I would do that mostly in the mornings. And then when I would come home from school, I would watch either the Kenneth Branagh version or the Mel Gibson version. And I think there was a third one too that is now. And so I just kind of had these on rotation. And so I was just like taking in everything that I possibly could on Hamlet. And somehow I convinced a couple of my friends to write some music, and it was really good. And it was actually my friend Owen who was like, you know, we need to really set this apart. What if it's like funk music? And I was like, yeah. And so he came up with the subtitle Prince of Funk, which I thought was awesome. And so I, you know, adapted the story, cut it down so that it was, you know, closer to 2 hours. Because if you do Hamlet and you add music, I can tell you from experience that it's going to be too long.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I ended up directing it mainly because the teachers were like, we don't know if this is even going to happen. You know, I had one of my English teachers was the advisor, Alex Davis Williams. She was so supportive and was just like, yes, yes, yes. And then we did auditions and everyone was like, Nehemiah, you need to audition for Hamlet. And I was like, people, I'm directing, I've adapted the book, like this, what do you think? Like, I can't. And we finished the auditions and everyone who was in the audition room was like, look, you want this to happen, you can sing, we will trust you to actually memorize, you know, not only Hamlet, but also the songs that we've added on top for Hamlet. So I ended up also playing
That
Hamlet.
Is unbelievable.
Yes. And so I was 16 at the time. I think we actually opened right around my 17th birthday. And it was actually the first musical in the Murrah Musicals history to make a profit because we didn't spend any money. And, you know, it was such a quintessential moment for me because it really consolidated that my love of doing this is about collaboration and working with people. And because we had this, the APAC school, the Academic and Performing Arts Complex, you know, I was in the music program. I had a lot of friends who were in the theater program. So they were ready. They were like, okay, you know, I had friends in the dance program who were like, okay, like, what if this was just like, you know, a big dance break and we just had a moment? I was like, sure, yes. And one of my friends, I remember Stephanie Raymond, she really she was in the visual arts program and she like helped design all of the art and like the set design and pulling all of that together. And it was all done by, you know, by the students. Like we did all of it. And at the end of that process, I felt it was like a joy that I had never felt before, just of what it really means to like create something as a community and to put it together. And so many of the friendships that were forged through that process have been, you know, some of my longest friendships that I've maintained throughout my life.
That is amazing. That is an incredible story.
Yes.
I can't even get over it. I'm floored. That's crazy.
I will give you one little sneak peek. My
Yeah.
favorite part, it wasn't Hamlet, it was actually Horatio at the opening of the piece. And this was, you know, written by my friend Owen Evans and performed by our friend Paul. And it was when Horatio sees the ghost and it breaks down, you just hear this like funky thing, this like just comes out of nowhere, electric guitars and like full band. And Horatio sings, "Baby, just speak to me. Tell me what you have done wrong. Baby, just speak to me." And that's how the show opened.
I think we stop everything else and just work on this. I don't know what you've got planned, but I figure to hell with it. I'm ready.
You know, I still have the script. It's like in a cabinet right around here. And it still has in the front of it, like the audition notices that my friend Alexis Larkin, who was basically playing like our producer, stage manager person, we like printed them out at her house and we put them up around school to get people, you know, in to audition. And supposedly there's a video that exists, but I think someone's parent like videoed over it. You know, there was like a football game someone wanted to see. So I would be very interested in figuring out a way to like get some of those people back together and figure out how to get that back into the world.
That's amazing. I can tell you that a friend of mine has a videotape of a production of 42nd Street that we were all in as seniors in high school. And I'm sure yours ages much better than ours did, because ours is a train wreck. You know, you look at it and you're like, wow, there's a bunch of kids who kind of can't sing, but kind of can hold a tune. And some of them can tap dance and some of them can't. But we're all up there like swinging for the fences. And it's a lot.
I mean, these are the things that, you know, like make lives, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes the memory of them is more important than the video evidence.
Yes.
Don't roll the tape.
Yeah, don't roll the tape. So you talked about collaboration and sort of how fundamental that, you know, starting from Hamlet, Prince of Funk, all the way through what you're doing now. Like, so as we're coming out of pandemic and all the things that sort of like held up the performing arts industry, how are things going for you? How are you getting back into like the collaborative process?
Oh yeah.
Sorry to bring it into a downer, man. But
no, you know, it's real and it's what we're doing. I feel like I learned a lot over these past 18 months about myself, about what I need in order to, you know, feel fulfilled. And, you know, obviously, like what a hard and difficult time this has been, you know, trying to, I was visiting family a couple of weeks ago, and my brother-in-law, who is also an artist, visual and musician, he just said, you know, I really had this moment where I realized that I had been labeled not only non-essential, but dangerous.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a kick for me, especially as someone who loves working with voices and choirs and people singing in rooms. You know, that was one of the most dangerous things that you could do with the aerosol droplets and the need for social distancing. So one, I learned just how important, you know, music and performing is to me. That was the longest period since I was born that I had gone without either being in a choir rehearsal. I was actually born on a Sunday, and then the next Sunday I was in church.
Amazing. Amazing.
And yeah, it is something like, what a wild ride, like
Yeah.
a once in a generation thing have happened. But I will say, especially as you were reading off all the things and all of what I've done, and the number one thing that I've learned probably during the pandemic is the importance of rest and taking care of oneself, which is, often something that I would put on the back burner, because I get so excited when I'm, in a theater, in a rehearsal room. I was the person that people would be like, Nehemiah, I haven't seen you actually leave this room in 8 hours. Like, have you eaten? Have you used the bathroom? like what's going on? And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. I should eat. So I've been a real big proponent of naps, of meditation, has been important to me during this time, and also trying to like maintain those relationships, because sometimes I'm a person who, like, if you want to see me or hang out with me, you need to like schedule a rehearsal, because that's the one way that you'll get me out. Because
Right.
if it's like a party, chances are I'll end up sleeping through it. Even when I was in college and the parties were literally in my house, I was like on the couch being like, I'm at the party and I'm also asleep, because I had 8 hours of classes followed by 10 hours of rehearsal, and I have to be up in 6 hours to start it all over again. So that's been an important, and I feel like not just a learning, but like a getting into the practice of resting. And I've really also been thinking about the kind of revolutionary act it is in our capitalist society to say, I am carving time for rest, to do nothing. I am not going to produce. I am not going to consume. I am going to care for my soft human body. And that I I think it's been good. As things are reopening, I see myself falling into similar patterns and like agreeing to too much because I'm so excited about
Yeah.
everything. And so now, like, I feel like I'm in a testing period where it's like, can I continue this and, perform and rehearse and create? And I think overall it's been really good for my collaborations. Um, really setting aside time and knowing that we're going to have to, go on Zoom and, talk about things, and really set aside that time, and not just relying upon, like, okay, well, maybe when you're out of that rehearsal and I'm out of this rehearsal, we'll see each other and we'll just, we'll chat or we'll jump on the phone, but just being more intentional about those relationships too.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is so insightful. I feel like we're in a business in which human connection is often the thing that we're actually making all the time, right?
Yes.
Whether it be through words or music or movement or what have you. And so I feel like a lot of my relationships sort of just were able to sort of ride the coattails of all the work that I was doing, because I was seeing people and you'd go out for a drink or you'd get to hug everyone at rehearsal. And so there was an autopilot way in which you were always connected to everyone, at least for short terms of a project or what have you. And so without the projects, had to become much more intentional to find people, seek them out, and make those connections. And it's a lesson I think that we all probably had to learn or relearn again. I think some people are even better at it than others, but I know what you mean in terms of like that type of sort of being thoughtful and mindful about it.
Yes. I think I am very hopeful that this is something that we like carry forward, you know,
Yeah.
that we don't just fall back into the same rhythms of like, okay, well, you know, I'll see you in rehearsal, or I'll see you, you know, on the train or
Yeah.
on the street outside of the theater or something, really, yeah, being thoughtful and intentional about our relationships. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to segue from thoughtful and intentional about relationships into being thoughtful and intentional about making uh, music, because you have a big old project coming up. Your musical, Triple Threats, is going for a workshop production in Florida in like a couple of weeks.
I know.
Can you believe that?
No, I can't.
Like 6 weeks or something.
Yes, it's so exciting. It will be our first time ever hearing, you know, the script and the music from beginning to end of the entire thing. It has 28 songs, or well,
Wow.
pieces of music
Yeah.
in it. And I'm proud to say, you know, that like we only have 7 more to write.
That's it. You're fine. You're well on track.
That's it. Yeah. Originally I was thinking that this would be a wonderful, like lengthy, slow process. And, you know, we would just try things out bit by bit, piece by piece. But yeah, the opportunity came, you know, we applied kind of on a whim, thinking like, you know, it's just good to stay in the habit and the practice of applying to things, writing about the show, explaining what it is to people. And yeah, and then we got it. And we were like, okay.
Yeah, now you got to do something.
Yeah. But it's been really great because, you know, thanks to Boomerang, and particularly thank you, Tim. We've been together, Tracy and I, who we have been working on it. We've been like in the recording studio, actually. We were working on some demos. So it was really great that we were already like in the midst of, you know, getting those wheels turning for ourselves. So I really think that that it will be possible to get it all done. And then it's also good to remember, you know, that it's a first workshop, and a part of the beauty of a first workshop is to see what's missing, to hear the mistakes, to, you know, find out what is difficult and are hard. I was singing one song for someone yesterday, and Tracy and I were both like, this character has quite the range.
Was it very high? Were you singing the soprano part?
Well, actually, yes, I did sing a lot of the soprano parts.
She said that, but she said you were doing
it. Yeah, it was really fun. Tracy, you know, she's got that tenor range is really good for her. And, you know, my choral training as a boy soprano comes in handy. I actually squeaked out a high A for one song, and I was like, it has been a good 20 years since the last time I sang a note.
That's amazing.
But no, the one that I was thinking about, there's a new song that we were arranging, and there's the character of the fence, who, you know, we're thinking he's a baritone, and for most of the song he's singing down in this range and he's singing down in this range, but then there's a part where it breaks into 3-part harmony and suddenly he's up here, and we're like
that's exciting.
Yeah, it's like, let's see what happens if, you know, if the actor yells at us and is like, are you insane? Like, it'll be a wonderful learning for us.
Yeah. So we're recording today on Monday, July 19th. And so you and Tracy Conyer-Lee, who we've been referencing but haven't really named specifically, you and Tracy, your collaborator on Triple Threats, just came out of 2 or 3 days of laying down sort of demo tracks for 8 or 9 of the big musical numbers, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
for people who don't make musicals, of which I admittedly am one of them, and am learning every time you tell me what you're
Yeah.
working on.
I'm like, not anymore. You're making musicals now, Tim.
I know. Who knew? Can you talk through like what this process has been like for the two of you this year in terms of, if you want to speak a little bit about sort of what we did in March, but then what you guys have been working on the last couple of weeks?
Yeah. Tracy is such a powerhouse, and she's been working on so many things, and I've been so happy to not only have this opportunity working on like this project as a collaborator with her as a composer, but she also wrote a play earlier in the year, Retreat, which was put on as an audio play by National Black Theater. And I wrote the music for her for that, and that was a wonderful process. She very recently was in a production of Where We Stand, which is a one-person show, which she did, and it was kind of a hybrid performance of in-person and online. So like pre-recorded situation. And so I got a chance to also work with her as a music director.
Wow.
So that was great. So in the midst of all of that,
Right.
it's like you think I'm busy. I'm just trying to keep up with Tracy.
That may be true, actually. We're all trying to keep up with Tracy.
Yeah. And in the midst of that, she had a brand new draft of Triple Threats, which we worked on in March. And it was just really a great process of having actors. We were on Zoom, but we did, a reading, and it was wonderful to hear it from beginning to end, and to have time and space in between to work, to write, to tweak, to get feedback from the actors, to hear, some of the personal stories that, the play was bringing up for them, and how it was resonating with them and their lives. So that was just amazing.
And so to interject for a second, just the play, the musical, the book that you guys are working on is a story about African-American performers in the 80s, and particularly one African-American performer who wants to transcend this idea of only getting to work on Black themed material, and wants to make something larger and really just swing for the fences in terms of artistically making something that is impactful.
Yeah, there's a recurring theme that is throughout the play is, as a Black director, he's constantly being asked to not only like direct the Black play, but it's like he's just basically being asked to repeatedly direct A Raisin in the Sun, which is a wonderful play, which is, a seminal piece of American theater. And yet it is the question of like, there's so much more out there. And the idea that, you get all of this training, you do all of this work, you do all of the apprenticeships, you do all of the assistantships, and then you're basically being, offered 2 or 3 things repeatedly because of the color of your skin. And it was really interesting to hear the performers who were a part of that reading like talk about that, and especially for those who were acting in the 70s and the 80s, like talking about having to make conscious decisions, to either say yes to those projects or to sometimes say no to those projects, even if they really wanted to do them, but just so that people would know that they could do more than that. And I think, in the midst of this pandemic, we've also been having like a racial reckoning in the country, and I think also in theater specifically. And so these conversations are really starting to come up and come out more. And it's amazing to see like how long people have been trying to bring attention to this in a way. So I'm so grateful to be working on this show. And it's funny, it's set the year before I was born. Starting off.
We're making us all feel old now.
Oh no, believe you me, you should see me like when I'm like hanging out with the young ones who are recently out of college, and I'm like, wait a minute, you were born after 2000? Like, is that like did we let people be born in the 21st century? Like what? Like
no.
Is that real?
No, it's crazy. So we were able to get together 12 performers as part of that workshop in March to read through the libretto and the lyrics that you guys had worked on. But unfortunately, due to the limitations of Zoom, we weren't able to actually get them to sing the songs. They read through the songs as if they were poetry or dialogue, but weren't able to sing them. So as a composer, what's that like for you to sit through and have the lyrics just read? Are you hearing them in your head, trying to like almost play them in your head, or are you writing along with them? And what's that like?
Yeah, it was a limitation, but in a lot of ways, I would say it was something that I was grateful for, because especially the current model of trying to do a full workshop of a full musical, and a lot of people try to do it in 29 hours, which is sometimes barely enough time to get like the music taught, and then you're trying to figure out narrative structural issues on top of that. It never feels like enough time to me.
And especially you're talking about a musical that has, you just told us, 28 pieces of music in it. How can you possibly get through that in 29 hours? I mean, it's impossible for the size and scope of the things that we're trying to accomplish.
So there's always some sort of trade-off. So I was grateful that we had this opportunity to say, we are going to focus on the script and we're going to focus on the lyrics. And it's interesting because like part of what's going on when I'm listening to it is I'm thinking about the music that we already have and how it weaves in and out of the script. And I'm also thinking a lot about pacing, which is something that is important to me. And as a composer, I try my best to have music that feels like it is flowing from the spoken word, so that it's not like, okay, like talking, and now here's a song. But I like the idea that you're talking, the emotion is building, and then you're singing, and that is what makes it like that, following the rhythm of how it is naturally spoken is something that's important to me. So I was really grateful for the time. And of course, the relationship between the script and the music in a musical is one that it's hard to take them apart. So I thought that was very useful to me to like have the time to let my brain kind of do the music stuff in the background and to pay attention to what's happening in the story. What are the relationships? Where are the emotional arcs? And letting that lead for, what then came next, which was us starting to focus like squarely on the music and giving that like some I want to say like specific time or like dedicated time. Yeah.
And so when you guys start to move away from the script and into the music, it seems like obviously on one level it's a head shift from like working just lyrically, but now you're working melodically and in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You worked on 8 of the songs, right? In the last couple of days?
Yes. Yes. I think 4 of them were brand new, and 4 of them were like after the reading, we learned a lot. And so some things needed to be moved around. We realized some characters were singing songs that they shouldn't. Some characters weren't singing songs that they should.
Yeah.
So, we realized that we needed to just, like apply the learnings from the reading to the music, which has been great and really helpful. And it's been so amazing because we've had the opportunity to work with Zay Luis, who is an amazing composer, performer, arranger in his own right, but he also has a recording studio, and it was really great to like have that be a part of our process, because what we're hoping to eventually build to is some more demo recordings that will actually be sung. But of course what we're eventually building to is a production.
We're building toward the Tony Awards. Let's just face the fact. Let's not call it anything short of that. Tony's 2025-26, whatever you want to call it, it's coming.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And yes. And so all of these, we're just thinking of like, how can we incrementally move towards that? And one of the ideas that came out of the reading and that workshop that we did was, what if we did, a workshop that was like really focused on the music in a really granular way, and allowing us time to play around. And one of the great things is there's a tool called MIDI. Mostly people, when they think of MIDI, you think of like terrible electronic sounds, like ding, 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 ding. But it has,
that's my really... ringtone, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, the MIDI technology has really blossomed in the last 30 years, but definitely in the last 5 to 10, I think some real leaps and bounds have been made. And the beauty of working in that medium is that you can actually, it's very simple to change the key, to change the tempo, to really try things that would be hard if we were, recording live instruments, which of course is yet again something that we're hoping to build with. But this is kind of like a time of play and to just try crazy things and throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. So it's been great to have Zay and be in his studio, and to have the 3 of us, like not worrying about like an external presentation, but just about between the 3 of us, what ideas are popping, what's making us excited, what are we hearing as we're just putting down the like outline and the basic structure and of the songs.
It sounds like it's going to be a valuable step to have taken as you move towards the fuller production, the fuller workshop in Florida in about 6-7 weeks. So
yes,
good to have that under your belt at that point, I would guess.
Yeah, I definitely think if we had not had the time for, both the workshop in March and this time that we had in July, I don't think we would have been able to actually say yes to the Florida production. So it made all the difference.
And so how long will you all be back down in Florida working on this? A week or?
Yeah, it's like a 10-day process that they have.
Okay.
So it's early September, and it's great. They spend like 3 or 4 days just teaching the music, and then they start to bring in more of the text around and start to build outwards. So it's not like the 4 to 6 weeks that I would love for the process, but it's definitely better than the usual 29 hours
Yeah, for
that you
sure.
get. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Yeah.
That is so exciting. So when you were writing, let's talk about your process for a hot second. Um, are you an early morning writer or a late night writer, or are there things you need to have, sort of like a place you like to work in the apartment, or things incense lit, music on, music? I mean, music probably isn't much of a factor because you're writing your own music, but like coffee versus wine, like what do you like to do? How do you like to get it going?
Yeah, so well, it's interesting because as you can see behind me, there are a lot of boxes.
Sure.
We're in the process of moving. And pre-pandemic, my most of what I did took place outside of the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I was working church jobs where I always had access to, like a piano and an organ, and, theaters where like sometimes I would go in early, before a rehearsal, set up the keyboard and get some of the writing done there. So actually this was one of the, or, sometimes there's like rehearsal studios that you go to. So really a lot of the time, most of my work was done outside of my home.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a solid 18 months of being like, all right, I am, this is my space. What can I do here? And of course, while this is happening, the nature of how I made music was changing, because as someone who loves collaboration, I also love like working with people and being like, hey, can you like sing this line while I play this, and I'm going to sing this other part. And so I didn't have any of my normal things. So
Right.
my creative process has changed a lot. I started working with a digital audio workstation, a DAW. I like to use Logic. That's my personal favorite. So I would sometimes, record there. And my favorite way of starting is I open up my laptop, I open up Sibelius. The time of day is not usually such a factor. It's kind of like where I can fit it in.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of prefer mornings, but sometimes, when I'm really in the flow, the morning can turn into the afternoon, turns into the evening, and sometimes just turns right back into the morning. Which, like I said, I am trying to be more thoughtful about
Sure.
rest and
Yeah. Yeah.
breaks. But I would say right now, my process is, I wake up in the morning, usually pretty early, like between these days, it's like between 7 and 8. I like to try to like do something a little physical. Recently, my husband has gotten into doing yoga with his Apple Fitness program. So sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just do like little exercises, in the living room or at my desk. And I know it's a bad thing, and I'm trying to break this habit, but sometimes what I will do is I will try to like get all of the like important emails out of the way. So honestly, sometimes that really eats
Oh
into
my
the
gosh.
work time.
Yes.
But usually by 10 o'clock I'm ready to focus on, the task in front of me. And I usually like to sit with whatever the lyrics, that I'm working with, or if I'm, scoring a play or film, I like to spend time with the text, usually in quiet. Sometimes if there's like, in the early part of the process of writing this, I was reading, what Tracy was writing, while also like listening to like an 80s playlist that we had kind of curated together to like get myself into the mood,
Yeah.
Some of my personal favorites, are like the Stevie Wonder trying to Tracy really introduced me to Hall and Oates, and I was like, oh, like wow, like hell yes. But it runs the gamut
Yeah.
of musical influences from that time period. And then I sort of transition to speaking the text, and I kind of repeat speaking the text, trying to find a rhythm to start with, and then I let that rhythm kind of take me and see what that does melodically, thinking about what other instruments might be involved with it. One of the things that's really helpful about using Logic, the digital audio workstation that I use, I can like have some pre-recorded drums going, and so like I'm getting into the rhythmic world of what I'm trying to create. And Tracy is so great because sometimes she's also like, so this one, I just need that Nehemiah. I don't want it like, I don't want this one to sound like anybody but you. I want your voice. I want this. And that's always exciting. And so then normally there's a lot of like trading of voice memos of just being like, okay, like I have this little idea. Tell me what you think about this. Tell me what you think about that. So Tracy and I have a lot of voice memos that we share with each other of like little snips, little pieces that we then try to put together. And it's so like another thing that's really great about working with Tracy is that she sometimes has very clear musical ideas of what she wants. And she's like, okay, I have this start for the melody, and can you help, like shape it? Can you help to like create more? Can you like just make it work?
Yeah, just fix it.
Yeah, that's really great because every collaboration is different. Sometimes I have people who they're like, okay, here are the lyrics. Sometimes, and I'm still working on this, like kind of collaboration. I have people who like to say, can you just send me some music? Like send me something that you think would fit this, like situation, and let me build lyrics off of your music.
Wow.
So, it's all very exciting, and I really enjoy all versions of it and working in any way that works for the project.
It's so funny because I think a lot of people probably wonder, do lyrics come first and then you put a melody behind them, or do you start with like the moment and sort of what that brings out musically and then try and write words to go with that? And I think it's such a fascinating chicken or egg sort of concept, and I can see where both elements of it could be successful depending on what the material is and what the collaboration is like. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I the answer is really both. And the style of the piece that you're working on and the genre of the piece that you're working on, like all of that influences what's the best process for that specific piece.
That's awesome. And so if you were to think back to advice people have given you over the years, whether it be about being creative or about sort of, life advice in general, is there a piece of advice that sort of sticks with you that you sort of maybe fall back on from time to time if you have to remind yourself, oh, XYZ, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. When I was really young, I think I was probably in the 5th grade. So I was maybe like 10, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at that performing arts school
Mm-hmm.
in Mississippi, Power APAC. And actually, the cool thing was in the 5th grade, you actually got to attend the school all day long. Like when you were in middle school, you would go for like 2 or 3 hours in the morning to the school, and then you would be bused like back to your actual middle school. And in high school, you would start off the day at your high school, and then somewhere around 2 o'clock, you would transition to going to this other school, which was actually down the hill. So you could just walk to Power APAC at that time from Murrah High School. But in the 5th grade, when I was, and anyway, this is too long of a story to get to the point. But it was 5th grade. I was at Power APAC. That was my school. We were having an assembly, and I still don't remember if like there was actually supposed to be like some performer and maybe they didn't show up or what it was, but it was so like casual. It was very casual, and it was like the entire school was there. So you had all of these students who were studying music, some were studying art, some were studying dance, some were studying theater, some were there just for advanced academics, And I remember Dr. Perry Combs, who was one of the music teachers. He like did the jazz band and the symphonic orchestra and music history classes. That was what he taught. He was like, just, it felt like I can't get over like how casual it felt, because I kind of remember him leaning against the stage. Like he wasn't even like, standing on the stage. He was like down on our level with us, and he was just kind of leaning. And he just asked this question of like, what does it mean to be successful? And of course, people are raising their hands and they're like, have a lot of money, have a big house, all of these answers. And he so expertly just turned it back around and said, you define what success means for you. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. And it is really about you and what you want from your life. And I remember my 10-year-old brain being like, wait, like there's not like a path that I'm supposed to do. Like if I want to be a musician, like I have to do this and this and this, and that's how I define success. And that is something that has stuck with me, because as I, and it's funny because, you brought up the Tonys, which are great, like I love the Tonys. I love the celebration of the arts. I love the celebration of all of the wonderful people who make theater. And it's also really weird because like giving out awards for such a, subjective thing as like best musical, like what does that even mean? Like what? So I feel like in my, as I've been growing and thinking, for me, success is about telling important stories, telling stories that are not told, being a part of a community, supporting that community. And the best is like finding a way of telling the story of your community and supporting your community by the work you are creating. So that is like, I guess, like a piece of advice that has not only stuck with me, but really shaped me.
I love that. I mean, we're not going to get any better than that. We're going to end it right there, my friend. If people wanted to see more of your work, hear more of your work, follow you, where should they go? How should they keep up with you?
Oh, what a great question. Definitely, I'm on the social medias, so
Okay.
you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not on TikTok. Please don't yell at me.
Fine.
I'm currently working on my website, having it updated, but it does exist. And if you eventually go there, hopefully by the end of this year, if not sooner, there's a lot going on in life right now.
Yes, for sure.
So it's hard to think about, managing my digital presence when my physical presence is in such a state of flux. But it exists, and it's, simply nehemiahluckett.com.
All right. Fantastic. We're going to put all of that in the notes below, so people are going to be able to find you and follow you and keep up with all the good stuff that you're doing. Nehemiah, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. This was such a pleasure. Let's do it again.
I would love that. All right, buddy. See you soon.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hang on. Oh.